Hi everyone, welcome to the Linguistics of the Voynich Manuscript. My name's Claire Bowern, and along with Luke Lindemann, this is collaborative work, and we're going to be talking about the linguistic aspects of Voynichese, the Voynich Manuscript, and so on. I'm going to start with some background. We're then going to have two vignettes of recent research and research questions before concluding and talking about some future directions. Okay, so first of all, just a little bit of background about the manuscript itself. The Voynich Manuscript is known as Beinecke Manuscript 408. It's at the Beinecke Library here at Yale. It's a pretty small manuscript in physical dimensions. It's got about 200 pages. We don't have the original binding. It was rebound subsequent to its initial creation. It's described very much as a peculiar manuscript. One of the things that people often talk about is the mystery around the circumstances of composition, its trajectory and history through the subsequent 600 years or so to the present, the contents, and so on and so forth. And it's in an unknown script. We don't know what language underlies it, or even if it is language, even if it is language at all. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, there are many theories, many claims of decipherment, and many are followed by subsequent retractions. So we get something like, the Voynich Manuscript, this mysterious text, has been decoded, or has it? Okay, world's manuscript solved, most mysterious book deciphered after 600 years, etc., or not, as the case may be. There are also a huge number of conspiracy theories around this manuscript, who composed it, whether it's a modern forgery, etc., etc. So that is not what I'm going to be talking about today. I am treating the object, as I think is reasonable, and as I'll briefly talk about, as a genuine medieval artifact, which has some mysterious properties which we can actually investigate and make progress on, even if we can't solve it itself. Okay, so we have many things along these lines. Okay, so Voynich Manuscript has been decoded, or hasn't it, etc., etc. Okay, so let's briefly talk about the manuscript itself. The manuscript has about 200 pages, about 36,000 words, and if I remember right, about 11,000 unique word types. We can divide the manuscript into 5 parts based on the illustrations that accompany the pages. We have plant illustrations like this one here. This is possibly some sort of Herbal manuscript. We also have an astronomy section, which has astrological zodiac diagrams and astronomical charts. We have a balneological section, so called because there are pictures of women bathing. We have a pharmaceutical section, which has jars and pictures of roots interspersed with text. And then we have paragraphs, which are starred but don't have any illustrations at all. And these are sometimes called the recipes section as well. So as you can see, the illustrations for the Herbal section contain a mixture of familiar and very unfamiliar items. So, this looks like a sunflower or a daisy or something along those lines, but then it has these beautiful cubed roots, which are not part of any literal drawing, lifelike drawing of such a flower. We have, as I mentioned, the astronomical charts and zodiac pictures. We have what is probably the Pleiades, but most of the other constellations are not identifiable with any certainty. Here's a zodiac illustration, and here's an example of one of the zodiac signs illustrated. You can see that it's also been labeled Abril here. So this is not in Voynichese. The area around the text around the zodiac sign is in Voynichese, but this is in possibly Old French, possibly some sort of Provençal, although it's difficult to locate precisely. Balneological section, as I mentioned, has these pictures of water, pictures of women bathing, and illustrations of them doing stuff like this one. Then we have the recipes section, which has these jars and roots and presumably recipes, or the toxicological section. And then we have the starred paragraphs as well. So here's a star, and here's the lack of illustrations here. We can make some other brief notes about the manuscript. It's written from left to right. There are 21 common characters, plus a couple of astrological symbols and other symbols, and the stars themselves. There's some decorative characters. Some of these characters are based on letters of the Latin alphabet, whereas others appear not to be. In terms of dating and so on, the parchment has been carbon dated to between 1410 and 1440, thereabouts. The evidence of the ink, the script, the style of illustrations, and the dress of the figures and so on is all consistent with that as well. So there's no reason to believe that anything other than this is an early 15th century document in terms of the physical manuscript that's been created. Of course, it could have been a copy of an older manuscript, and so the language represented may be something different. But in terms of the physical manuscript, it's pretty clearly from the early 15th century. The script has characteristics of features of italic scripts, but we also have other characters as well. Likewise, the dress puts it somewhere probably in that part of Europe. I mentioned the script, so we have characters here. For instance, we have an A-looking type thing. We have a C thing, which is, and we have what's known as the extensible Voynich alphabet, or EVA system, which is a transcription system for Voynichese, which has ASCII characters as substitutes for Voynich characters. Of course, this raises a whole bunch of questions about the correct interpretation of these characters, for instance, whether there is one type of 8, which is rendered as D usually, or whether there's 2 types, whether in this case, EVA tends to under-differentiate rather than over-differentiate. There's another system called V101, Voynich 101, which tends to over-differentiate in some cases. We also have questions about what to do with these composite characters as well. So, for instance, this thing written as C capital FH is a combination of what's known as the bench character here and what's known as a gallows character, which is rendered up here with F. And it's not known at this point how these characters relate to other aspects of the script. 5 people were involved in the composition of this manuscript, or the creation of this manuscript, according to Lisa Fagan-Davis. She's able to show, I've got illustrations here for 4 of the scribes, but based on systematic differences in the handwriting, it's possible to say that there were 5 different hands involved in the creation of the manuscript. Now, the manuscript, as I mentioned, was created physically sometime in the early 15th century. Our first record of it in a particular place comes from the early 17th century, where, because we have the signature of de Tebinets on the flyleaf of the manuscript. He wrote his name on it very nicely for us. And he became a noble in around 1608. So he must have acquired the manuscript sometime around that time. It's mentioned in letters. It actually disappears from the record in the 1660s, and then turns up again in 1912. Where it was found, discovered, acquired, shall we say, by Wilfred Voynich, who's illustrated here. It came to the Beinecke Library in 1970, where it's been ever since now. And there are high-quality facsimile images on the Beinecke's website. There's also a machine-readable translation as well. So with that background, I'm going to stop here before moving on to part 2.